Welcome, everyone. My name is Dr. Matthew Olson. I'm a senior associate with Public Consulting Group. I'm also one of the program chairs here. Welcome to Jacksonville and the Site Conference. And because we have such a large representation of Gators here today, I'm also a former Gator and instructor in the Educational Leadership Department at the University of Florida. And today I have the privilege, absolute privilege of introducing Dr. Donald Pemberton as one of our invited speakers. And being in education for over 20 years, I often hear people talk about educational change. Meetings about making change in education, meetings about changing teacher education. And there's so much talk. Rarely do you see someone that does something about it. And even more rare is someone who's really brought about educational change 3 times. First time from 1986 to 95, Dr. Pemberton was the president of the Pinellas Education Foundation, creating a strong partnership between the community and the public schools in the western part of the state of Florida. From there, he moved on to develop one of the most exciting programs in the state of Florida called Take Stock in Children, where members from the community mentor at-risk students and help them find a path to higher education. And most recently, Dawn has been the director of one of the most innovative centers, some people call it a hub of innovation, at the University of Florida called the Lassinger Center, where his amazing team is helping to reinvent teacher education, the practice of teaching, high-quality teaching with recognition from federal government in terms of an I-3 grant and recognition in terms of grants and awards from almost every foundation you can possibly think of. And we often joke about Don and his success in getting grants that foundations actually submit proposals to him to get grants. So as someone who's worked with Don, had the opportunity of seeing the impact in real time, he is truly changing the face of education for teachers, school leaders, and district leaders. So without going too far into his accomplishments, Dr. Pemberton is here today to talk about some truly innovative technology resources for practitioners and policymakers. So, Dr. Pemberton, thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here today, and thank you. Thanks, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here today, and what a wonderful opportunity to be able to be with colleagues from around the state and country and world who share our passions. And I've been invited today to present a case study of sorts on the innovation cycle, on how fast these days we can take a concept from the lab, from research, all the way to implementation and scale up in the field. In this room today, we have university researchers, we have practitioners and educators from school systems, and these folks and others around the state and country and world are forming teams to be able to conceptualize, design, and implement groundbreaking innovations that have the potential to transform the quality of teaching and learning and child outcomes in our communities and, I would say, the world. So I've been asked today to share our story with you of one of our most recent innovations, where we were able to conceptualize new initiative and bring it to scale in 6 months. We share that with you with great humility because we know what a challenge and the complexity of doing this work. We'll try to present it in simple ways so that it can be understood. But what we also do is we invite you to look at our case study through your own lens. That lens might be of what are the essential elements or components to innovation, to being able to take an innovation from the lab to the field. What are the parts of an ecosystem that allow one to be able to have a much greater impact in teaching and learning? And there are probably many other questions that you might have or lenses that you could look at the innovation cycle. And I invite you to use those lenses and to use our case study to help to inform and advance your own practice. What we hope to do is to essentially lift up the hood and allow you to see inside an incubation shop that seeks to do this work on a continuous basis. We hope to do this transparently so that you and your own work might be able to see some similarities or differences in what you're seeking to achieve in your communities as well. So I invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy our story over the next few minutes as we try to compress 6 months worth of work into just a few minutes. First, let me give you a little bit of context about who we are. So before we tell you what it is that we're doing and this particular story of innovation, you've got some feeling about our background and the type of work that we've been doing. I run a center in the College of Education at the University of Florida that's been active for a little more than 10 years. We're an education, incubation, and innovation center that seeks to identify very specific needs in some key areas, and we form practice groups of researchers and practitioners and clinical professors and philanthropists and government leaders, school system administrators and educators to work with us in helping to both identify needs and also to identify and bring to scale new solutions. Much of our work is infused with e-learning, digital learning. We're working with some innovations in the early learning field, have spent a lot of time and effort in developing professional development innovations in the teacher quality area. All of our innovations we approach from a systems architecture perspective, really thinking about not just programmatic innovations, but systems change and how that relates to policy as well. So we think about these things on different levels. And today I want to share with you one very specific need that came to us from the work that we do. Not only do we have a team at the University of Florida that does this work, but we work in several communities in our state, and we've worked in other states, and we've got some work in Abu Dhabi going on as well, too. But this particular innovation that I want to share with you came about as a result of work that we're doing in the field in the state of Florida. And as we're visiting with colleagues around the state, a question we frequently ask is, what's keeping you up at night? What are you most worried about? What are the concerns that you have? And we ask that question of teachers, of leaders, of principals, of philanthropists, and others. One day in one of the counties here in the state, we were talking to a district superintendent and asking her that question. And she told us that what was really worrying her these days was the fact that we had a new end-of-course exam in the state of Florida in algebra, high-stakes exam, an exam that if students failed it and weren't able to pass, that they wouldn't be able to graduate high school, they wouldn't be able to advance in their math courses, and this would be a real barrier to student success in school and in life. As a matter of fact, the failure rate that that our colleague was seeing in her community was more than 50% for ninth graders were failing this exam. And she was deeply concerned that for certain segments of the population, that failure rate was even higher. And the question became, what was it that a university research and development group might be able to do to work with school systems, with other groups that were seeking to improve educational outcomes, that had a real feeling towards equity and towards student success. What is it that we could bring to the table? How could we help? So this issue, as we looked at it, was critical because we saw that it was the type of issue that we thought a university group such as our own that works in partnership in school systems and with government and philanthropies, that we might be able to assemble a team to develop some new approaches that we could bring to the field. And we were particularly eager to address this one because we saw it as a policy imperative in the state of Florida. Since the Florida legislature had passed rules and regulations saying unless students pass this exam, they would never graduate high school and weren't able to move forward. So part of our methodology at the Lastinger Center in the College of Education at UF is anytime we're going to develop an innovation, we feel we should go to the field and ask questions of those who are most affected by it. In this case, students and teachers. So we formed a practice group within our center that consisted of math education professors, that consisted of clinical professors in math that were working in the field, of learning architects, a diverse team. And we invited a group of teachers from around the state of Florida, algebra teachers. And we asked them, what is it that you would want? What is it that you would need? How is it that we could help? And before I get into what they said, I want to share with you the emotion in which they said this. The first thing they told us was, this is really odd. This is really strange because no one has ever come and asked us before, what is it that we should be doing to help classroom teachers? There is a real sense of disconnect in the field that we're not listening enough to teachers and asking them who are working with students on a daily basis the type of supports that they would most value. So we even saw tears and very strong emotions of teachers talking about their reality, about doing the best that they could to help their students succeed, and yet feeling sometimes that their work was constrained, feeling sometimes that there was a curricula that they were told they needed to teach, there was a pacing guide to go with it, and they were basically telling us that in many cases they were hearing that here's how you should teach, what you should teach, and when the results don't come in, guess whose fault that is? And so what the teachers were telling us is they would like to have some tools and some resources that they could use in a different way that would help to expand the teacher's reach into the home, into the community, to make it ubiquitous, to make it a 24/7 experience. What they asked us to do was to develop an online resource that they could use in many different ways, that they could use in a blended way, that they could use to individualize instruction, that they could use for assessment, something that would also capture the power of social learning so that the students would have and teachers could have a sense of community in supporting their students in the classroom. They wanted something fun. They wanted something that was standards aligned so that whatever they were teaching towards the state standards, which was going to be measured in the end of course exam, would be aligned with the learning resources that we would be able to create for them. They wanted something interactive and engaging. And they said, and on top of all of those things, they wanted it to be free. And also, could we hurry up and do it now? So you can imagine the excitement that our dean and the College of Education and others had when we ran back and we said, here's all the things that teachers want, and by the way, can we hurry up and do it immediately, and can we give this away? The first thing we did, we accepted that challenge because we think it made sense that considering our commitment to equity and consider our commitment to the fact that there were 50% or more kids failing this exam and whose careers and whose lives would come to a standstill if they're not able to get through this, that we had a moral obligation to act. So we looked at the resources we had and said, how can we partner? How can we find a partner that could bring some resources that we might not have right now? And fortunately, in Gainesville, where we have a lot of innovation that is coming out and high-tech companies that are, I've lost something here, Randall, so I'll let you come and see if you can fix that. But fortunately, in Gainesville, we have a lot of high-tech companies, and we looked around and found a local company that had a learning management system that we thought we could use. And so we partnered with them. Their name was Study Edge. And they were working on providing online support and tutoring to college students. And they had studios. They had the capacity to produce videos. They had some of the infrastructure that we would need. So we decided together that with our university team and with the ability to work with a local company, that we would self-finance an innovation that we would call Algebra Nation. And our goal was to listen to all the things the teachers were asking for and be able to produce that in a quick period of time. And we started in June, and our goal was to be fully online by January. And so off we went to the races. And as part of that, we decided that because we were going to self-finance this, and we were contributing our time, our team's effort, Study Edge was building the technology and absorbing that cost. Our thinking was that we wanted to bring this to the education marketplace as quickly as possible so that it could be used immediately. But we were thinking long-term about how do you sustain these innovations. So we went and met with the governor of the state of Florida and with key legislators and asked them to champion this effort. Asked them to say, here's a policy imperative. Here's an initiative that the state of Florida wants to see become successful, which is to see all students be able to master algebra. Here's a major problem you have. Here are teachers asking for a solution. What is it that you can do, Mr. Governor? And what we're asking of you is to use your bully pulpit to promote this, to make sure that this is going to be used, to get behind it. And in our private meeting with the governor, he said, how much money are you asking for? And we said, right now, we're not asking for anything. Right now, we're asking you to become engaged, the legislative leaders to become engaged. If you see it working, if you see that it has value, then we're asking you to champion that and provide the resources to make that happen. And so in January of last year, in Florida, we had the governor stand with us as we launched the program. And what that consisted of, you'll remember what the teachers wanted. Here's what Algebra Nation became. It became a lot of different things, and we've been advised not to define it, but allow you to define it. But Algebra Nation can be thought of as an online resource. It can be thought of as a blended resource. It can be thought of as a way to personalize and individualize education. But the essential elements of what it includes is an algebra wall where students at any time of the day or night are able to go and post a question. If they're trying to factor polynomials at 9 o'clock after soccer practice, they've forgotten everything they learned that day about how to factor polynomials, they're able to quickly go on the algebra wall and post a question. We have study experts who we've hired to monitor the wall. And those study experts usually wait a couple of seconds before someone posts a question to see if other students that are part of this community would answer it. And normally they do. Normally other students that are also working on algebra, they chime in and help that student work through that problem. What we also have are teachers. We have a number of teachers, and we'll get to exactly how many in a minute, that are using this system, that are actually at home, maybe grading papers, seeing if their students are online, and they tend to answer questions and help students work through it. But if none of them chime in, then the study expert chimes in, and she helps the student to work through the problem. The students can upload their problem they're working on. They can take a picture of it and send it up. But they have a way to get support at any time that they need it, nights, weekends. We monitor it and we provide that support. What we also have is an assessment system. So in addition to the assessment system, we have videos of different study experts, teachers, master teachers, that are teaching content in different ways. My nephew Mark is a math genius. He was doing algebra in 7th grade. His uncle Don was on the other spectrum. So my nephew can work through this very quickly and be accelerated through this system. I, on the other hand, might need a little more time, and I might need a teacher who's teaching it in smaller chunks and helping me work through it. So what we figured out was that we would have different type of study experts or teachers that were delivering the algebra to students in different ways that would align with who they were and how they learned. So, for example, we have an engineer, a computer scientist who is a master tutor, and he runs through it. And for Mark, that's what he wants. He gets it the first time, they get it, they're able to move forward. We have Melody, who teaches it at a slower pace. And so students are able to watch those videos and move with it. When students finish a segment of their work, they're able to go to our assessment system, again, all aligned with the standards, and are able to take a test and see how they did. If they missed certain questions, they're directed immediately to those videos, to those standards that would help them to work through it. In addition to this, we know from research that if you're working online and you've got something that you can work with on paper and pencil, for some students, that's helpful for some. And so we develop study guides and provide study guides free of charge as well. What we also learned is that what teachers began asking us is that there's kind of the front end to Algebra Nation, which is for the students, but the teachers were asking for a back end to Algebra Nation, which would be their own community of practice, their own professional development hub. So when they were teaching factoring polynomials, they could go to the back end and look at 4 or 5 or 6 ways of being able to teach that. So different ideas from the field. And so we shared that with the Gates Foundation, and through our good fortune, they were looking with the implementation of Common Core standards, or here in Florida we call them Florida standards, but they're essentially the same. that they were looking to form teacher networks to be able to work in a community to help to make sense of the new standards and to share their practices, to be able to learn from each other, to have a community, to have a place where they could go for help. And quickly we began to see that we have an ecosystem forming around algebra. And what we also saw was the creativity of teachers and how to use this resource. So teachers began to use it in many different ways, including in a very blended way, where some of the students, and maybe for some teachers in a flip way, where they were having students look at videos and do their tests and quizzes online, come to class, and where they could break them up into groups and work with them that way. They were individualizing instruction. Many of the teachers figured out something that we've seen, and that is that during the school day, they were having students work individually and in groups. When they got stuck, instead of raising their hand and calling the teacher, they were going online to our study experts and basically expanding the universe of support for them. Very creative on their part, in that it wasn't just one teacher working with the kids, but all of a sudden there were the study experts available to answer their questions and help them work through it. About 3 months after we launched the program, we got a call from the Florida legislature. And this was 1 year ago right now. And it was right during the beginning of the new legislative session. And Algebra Nation, by that point, was 3 months old and was being used by about 80,000 students in the state. We were having a total of 10,000 postings a month to our algebra wall from students. And you'll recall that I had shared this with the legislature and with the governor, and the users of this, the teachers and the students, were so passionate about this that they shared their passion and the value of this resource with our legislative and government leaders. And on a Saturday, and I will never forget this Saturday, I'm sitting home when my phone rings, and it's the chair of one of the committees in the legislature for education calling and saying, we see Algebra Nation, we like it, we see that it's aligned to policy, we think this is exactly what we need to see in the state. We're so happy that our university is taking the leadership in developing this system. Could you use a total of $2 million to be able to really just scale this up? After I passed out and woke up, and I assured them that we could use that $2 million. And so we continued to build it out. And we had originally built it as a Facebook app. That was our technology partner had a Facebook app that they were using, so we just helped to modify that and used it. The challenge was that most school systems blocked Facebook, so students were able to access this at night, but teachers wanted it fully loaded so they could use it in their class on a daily basis. So we used the new funding to be able to hire a company out of California called Clever to integrate our program, and we got our programmers to make it a web-based program so that all school systems in the state could be able to access and teachers could use it in their classroom without Facebook, so they have all the protection. We have fully integrated with the vast majority of school systems in the state. They're using it either fully integrated right now or still with the old piece, but the usage has skyrocketed since we've done that. We now have a total of 250,000 active students that are using it. We have 3,300 teachers and a growing number of schools every day. We also are currently building that back-end professional development piece for the teachers, and we'll launch that in the fall. What we've seen is a growing passion on the part of teachers and how they're using this. And what we're seeing is that they've really taken ownership of this. What we're seeing is that our strategy of having no barriers, of breaking down the barriers that could have existed, we could have developed this and then gone to a foundation or the legislature or elsewhere, and we'd still be in the process of funding it, of building it, of launching it. We took some risk in being able to give it away. We saw it as disruptive in the marketplace, and that there are publishers, there are competitors, there are others, but no one had a product just like this one. And so we saw that strategy of breaking boundaries, not only in our conceptualization of it, which meant not just university researchers, not just our technology folks, not just school system, not just legislature, but bringing all of those together to create and have a knowledge of what that looks like. We call that an ecosystem, and this case is the Algebra Nation ecosystem, and this is where I leave you. Our design, we believe you win by design, we believe you win with content, we believe you win with technology, but we also believe you win by listening to teachers and to the field. But we are strong proponents that they are systems, and there's an architecture to the systems in which we work and live in. And instead of just building a wonderful online resource and throwing it out there and expecting the world to come to it, we really thought about all the moving parts. So we worked very closely with school systems and making sure the superintendents, the math supervisors, the principals, and others learned about it, promoted it, talked about it. We worked with the individual schools in the state to publicize it so that algebra teachers were getting messages coming to them from all over the place, from their professional development meetings, from the superintendents, from the school boards, from the media. We also really thought of how this work supports public policy. Our goal was to make it sustainable with ongoing funding from the state. That was our particular play here. So we clearly understood from the get-go that if we're able to make a difference with this resource, that we would be in line for getting more support from the state. And indeed, that's what's happened. We understood what it would take to make it a win-win for our legislators, for the governors, for the superintendents, for the school systems. And we've also thought about how this fits into our philanthropic leaders in our state and country, who are looking for innovations that are rapidly scaled and that can be measured to produce better outcomes. And so we've been very, very fortunate to secure an increasing amount of support from some major state and national philanthropies in continuing to build this, and also in supporting some new innovations that we have in the pipeline that are getting ready to come out. This has been a very positive outcome for us in terms of demonstrating just how quickly we can take an idea and scale it system-wide and be able to measure that. We've also seen that in a time of big data and analytics, that we are building a more and more robust and powerful ability to analyze specifically, as we have 250,000 users on this, where is it that students are getting stuck? How are they getting stuck? And we're able to give that in time to the school systems to say, this school, this teacher, this place, here's what's going on, and here are ways that we can help that teacher ultimately to understand the areas that she can work on to help to improve her students' performance. Right now, we have a team of researchers led by a University of Florida researcher that is measuring the impact of this. Ultimately, we're looking at it on many different levels. First, of course, in terms of student outcomes and how better they're doing. Secondly, in terms of all the different ways that teachers are using it, so we can study and understand, are they more effective using it just as a study resource at home or in a blended way, or how are they personalizing and individualizing learning around this? So we've created a very rich and robust way in real time for researchers, practitioners, policymakers, and others to advance their individual and collective goals. On my way here, I just got a text message from a colleague in Tallahassee, our capital, saying that there was another $2 million in the budget for the continuation of this next year, and that there was anywhere, he wasn't sure because he was looking at two different items, that there was anywhere from 4.5 to 8 million for us to launch this as a summer initiative as well, in order to be able to look at how we could have our own programs around the state to work with students who hadn't been successful the first time around, and to use this in a blended way to have some on-site work. So those conversations are going on. And what we also heard today was that a new innovation that we're coming out with in the early learning field for early learning educators was in the budget this time, and we're working on this one. We haven't done it yet. We're getting ready to do it. It was in the budget for a total of $2 million as well. What that tells us is that this innovation cycle, the work that you're doing in your communities, we're sitting at a great time in the world, I believe. We know more about teaching and learning than we've ever known before. We know more about student motivation, about the science of learning. Our technology innovations are coming at us at such a rapid pace. They're coming to us at a lower and lower cost. And we have the ability, literally, to be able to conceptualize and bring to the marketplace at a record pace, at a fast pace, these innovations. And we believe that one way you do it is by an understanding of the systems and how they work. I share this work with great humility to you. We share our successes today. I could spend 100 times or longer sharing our failures with you as well. But today, at least, we'll tell you about one that's worked, one that's scaled. And we appreciate your interest and look forward to answering any questions that you might have. I know we're available online. Finally, if you want to visit Algebra Nation and get inside it and poke around it, we invite you to come to our website, which is lastingercenter.com. On the landing page on our website is an article that pretty much tells you the story I just told you, that you can download. On the bottom of our landing page on our website says, Visit Algebra Nation. We put that up especially for you, so that if you're interested, you can go into it and poke around and take a look at it, and it'll tell you exactly how to access it. So we hope you're enjoying your conference, and we wish you the best. Here, we're hoping for sunshine to come out so that we can really be the Sunshine State for you. And thank you for your attention today.